Thanks, Leonie. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Today our presentation will be delivered in two parts. I will first be covering just a bit of an overview of our surveillance, what we're doing and why we're doing it, and what we have planned coming up. And then I'll pass on to Donna, who will speak more about the trapping that's occurring on the North Coast at the moment. So, as Mark mentioned earlier on, the fall armyworm distribution in Queensland has been found as far as south as Bundaberg. So looking at the map, doing a bit of a Google map search, it's roughly the 550, 600 k's from our New South Wales border. So it's definitely getting quite close to us. So the main reason we are doing surveillance is to help monitor this movement of the fall armyworm and to hopefully provide some early warning to industry as they transition to management. I just want to note at this point, it was decided at a national level when fall armyworm was detected in Australia that it wasn't technically feasible to eradicate, and that's why it's moved to a management phase. So in order to determine our priorities for surveillance, we had to consider a few things which have been talked about this morning. Things like the biology of fall armyworm, so obviously taking into account its life cycle, the climatic conditions it needs in order to complete this life cycle. And Mark mentioned earlier as well that because it can't diapause, it can't survive those cooler conditions. I have included this climate modelling map as well, which is the same that Mark put in his presentation. And we definitely referred to this as well in that decision making as to where to put our priorities for surveillance. Another thing we had to consider was host availability. We know that it has a wide host range. In Queensland, they've been particularly seeing it on things like corn and sorghum, while they remain available and attractive. So we needed to keep that in mind as well. So taking all this into account, the time of year, it's autumn, cooling down, which is an understatement for here in Orange, it's freezing. We decided to put our current priorities in the North Coast region. Donna's going to speak a bit more about this after me, specifically about what kind of trapping they're doing. Other northern New South Wales areas, Northwest Local Land Services region, they're hoping to be putting some traps out soon around the Moree area. This was a decision made a couple of weeks ago based on there are a few host crops still available. We're obviously at the tail end of the summer cropping season. And it was warm then. I'm not sure what the weather's like now, but we're just running into a few logistical errors with Australia Post trying to get those traps up to them. We've also been chatting to the Northern Tablelands Local Land Services as well and looking at what trapping can be done around there and potentially moving into spring for that as well. For other regions of New South Wales, as Mark said, the fall armyworm definitely has the ability to migrate down south, so in those warmer months. So we're looking at some trapping moving into spring for areas including the Riverina. But we'll have to just make that call later on in the year once we know more about the moth distribution, host availability at that time of year, and what the weather's doing basically. So when I'm talking about trapping, what kind of traps we're using. So we're using traps called universal bucket traps. This is in line with what the federal government's using, Queensland government, and what's recommended overseas as well. So these traps are baited with a pheromone lure, which is more attractive to the male adult moths. It's important to note that if you do trap fall armyworm adults in these traps, it's not a true indication of the population density. And so taking this into account, we also look at the host crops next to where we've got the traps for larvae. We haven't found fall armyworm yet, but we are catching other species, which Ainsley just spoke about. So if we are seeing moths in the trap, we go out and look in the crops that very same day for larvae. And all our samples are going down to Orange Ag Institute for expert diagnosis. So reporting, we've heard a bit about reporting and how to report, but just want to make the point that fall armyworm hasn't been found in New South Wales, or hasn't been confirmed in New South Wales as yet. So it still remains as prohibited matter, and this means that it's notifiable. So if you do suspect you might have found fall armyworm, it needs to be reported to New South Wales DPI, Biosecurity. So you can do this by emailing the Biosecurity email address, which is on the screen. As Ainsley said, it's important to include clear photos, and a lot of the triaging can be done via this, which is really helpful for everybody. You can call the Exotic Plant Pest hotline, which from there you can select New South Wales, and that'll be answered by our hotline staff. Otherwise, there is an online reporting form on the website. You might just need to do a bit of a Google to find that. In terms of diagnostic support, obviously we've said Orange Ag Institute are providing, they provide the diagnostics for insects in New South Wales. So at the moment, fall armyworm is an exotic, still considered an exotic to New South Wales, and therefore diagnostics are free, as are any diagnostics for suspect exotics. Moving into the future, when we do find fall armyworm, we will still be providing that level of diagnostic support, especially to help people transition into that management phase. People like agronomists and growers, just to help them get their eye in it. I think we may be providing some training as well further down the track, but obviously it will depend on the pandemic situation. Just to finish off, I just wanted to mention there has been some talk of industry organisations potentially sourcing some traps or planning on doing some surveillance, which is great. We're just really keen to hear from those people if they are planning on doing surveillance. There is obviously a level of diagnostic support that they may require, and just really shared situational awareness is better for everybody. If we're doing surveillance and we're finding them and someone else is in another area, if everybody knows what everyone is doing, then we can alert industry sooner. Another thing just to keep in mind too, if you are planning on trapping, there's a permit available for the trapping, and that's because of the lure and the insecticide block that is required to be used in the traps. At the moment that we know of, there's only one permit, and it requires efforts to be carried out under the direction of a government officer. So at this point, if you are wanting to do it, it'll have to be done under that permit. So yeah, anyway, just get in contact with myself. My email's on the screen, and we can discuss how we can support you. We've developed some procedures around the trapping, and we've refined those over the last few weeks. So I'll hand over to Donna now, who will talk more about the trapping that's happening on the North Coast.
Hi, Rach. Thanks so much. And good afternoon, everybody. So as you can see from this map, what we have are 30 universal traps situated at 15 sites across the North Coast region. Those sites were identified as being a good host species range as well as a geographical range. And the host species that are included in those sites are sorghum, corn, dryland rice, sugarcane, soybeans, ryegrass and forage pasture crops, and pecans. So now having a look, when we have a think about trap placement, it needs to be in an area that's clear of trees, that's in close proximity to the host crop, and preferably where there's no street lights or housing lights surrounded by it. The trap comes in 4 different components. So as you'll see from that diagram, the lure goes into that top little green basket, and the dichlorvos block goes into the bottom of the trap. We did some research of trapping procedures that were going on in the US and decided that we'd go ahead with making our own trap stands. And so they're a 2 metre long length of Rio rod with a flat piece of steel attached to the top of it, which is what we hang the traps off. They've actually proved to be really handy in field. They're very simple to put in, they're sturdy, they're very cost effective, and they're really simple to be able to decontaminate if we need to move that stand from one place to the next. Also attached to that rod is a copy of the permit that you can see there on the right hand side. It's a permit for both the lure and the dichlorvos block, and it just gets attached with a zippy tie to the top of that stand. Once they're secure and they have a unique identifying code put on the outside of it, of the trap, then all of that information gets put into the My Pest Guide Reporter app. So when we go to do the collections, the traps are cleared once a week. If we go to the trap and we find that there's moth present, we then go into the crop and look for larvae. Then both the moth and the larvae are packaged up and sent down for identification to Orange Ag Institute. You can see from those pictures that are on the screen there, on the left-hand side, the little blue thing is the lure. On the right-hand side is the small dichlorvos block. And then, as Ainsley was saying earlier, package them up so that they turn up and they're all good to go and not in 1,000 different bits. So what have we found to date? So there's been 3 trap clearances done in the southern region and 1 trap clearance done in the northern region. Unfortunately, COVID-19 travel restrictions hindered us getting those traps placed any earlier, and we only did that late last week. So the good news is, to date, as everybody else has said, we've had no fall armyworm detected, just some common species that people would be able to identify as Helicoverpa, loopers, and false armyworm. So that brings me to my last slide, which I guess for me is one of the most important. It's an acknowledgement to the landholders that without a moment's hesitation have given us ongoing access to their properties to be able to establish and then check the traps. And without the support of these guys, this surveillance effort wouldn't look like it does, and it wouldn't have been as easy. So my heartfelt thanks goes out to all 15 of you guys. You've definitely made my job a whole lot easier over this last month, and I thank you very much. And that's it from me. Thank you.